Does flying with kids stress you out with the loss of control, delays, disruptions, and no schedule for the kids? You hate it, right? But you still want to see your family who lives somewhere else, or you still want to go visit cool places and kind of travel and have fun and that sort of thing. Do you ever feel stuck? The alarm goes off and you think, is this really my life? Do you wish you could douse your relationships or your career or even your business with rocket fuel and throw a match on it? End the blah once and for all. They either launch or they burn up and you get to start over. I've been there and I see you. I'm Ben Walters, an entrepreneur, pastor, coach, and consultant. If you're ready to get unstuck and ignite your super pumped life or business, I'll give you the rocket fuel and the match. All you have to do is light it. In episode 14, I shared how I missed 2 flights, and those helped me meet a woman who ended up being my wife. Many of you have subsequently come back with horror stories about summer travel delays. This has been a particularly rough summer, I think, for travelers here in the United States. But I also heard from a lot of you who are like, oh, that sounds well and good when you're traveling as a solo guy. Sure, that's easy. Or you're traveling as a couple. That's easy. But what about when you're traveling with kids? And I thought, I am so super pumped to talk about this subject because I have traveled so darn much with my kids, and I've done some things wrong. I've done some things right, but man, it is a great topic. And I am so excited to just jump into this thing. I kept this log for our oldest daughter, Anna, of every flight she took. And I went back and looked at it. And I was like, holy cow, in her first year of life, she did 50 flight segments. That's takeoffs and touchdowns. Now, a lot of those, if you go, with a connection to one destination each way, that's 4 flight segments, but it's still a lot. And she had flown on 8 different airlines. But by the time she was 4, I looked at it, she'd done 215 flight segments. So for those of you who maybe say, oh, you don't know what it's like to fly with kids, I surely and definitely know what it's like to fly with kids. We have 3 kids, the compression of our kids, 3 kids within 40 months. So even when our daughter Anna reached 4 years, she had a sister that was 21 months behind her and then a brother that was 19 months behind. So really young kids, 3 and 40 months. We love to travel, and we were living in Ohio, but we had family in Arizona and Boston. And so if we wanted to see the cousins and the aunts and uncles and the grandparents and all those important relationships, we knew we had to travel because it's one thing to have people come to you, but it's not the same as being, I would call it home for the holidays or just home in the summer, seeing people, that kind of thing. We have become pretty adept, or we were pretty adept at flying with kids and how that all works. So I want to give you a few tips and tricks. You're going to know some of these you might not. First thing is, even though kids under 2 fly free, if you financially can afford it, you are better off with your kid in a car seat, just for safety reasons and for space reasons. It is very challenging to keep maneuvering your kid around on your lap, even passing them if you just have one kid back and forth between 2 parents. It's even more difficult if you're flying as a single parent or maybe just flying solo and you're trying to juggle an infant in arms, as they call it, as well as other kids. That gets really tricky. So if you can get a car seat and get a seat for them, that's a good thing. If you decide you're not going to do that, you want to save the money, and I understand that, saves a lot of money. I guess that's all those flights we saved if we didn't do that. But you have to add them to the flight manifest. So make sure you go online, go on the app, and add them in, even though they're not a paid seat, because the airline needs to know that, how many people are on this flight. So just do that in advance. And the more things in general you can do in advance that you're not having to do at the actual airport as part of that is a good thing. All right, now let's get on to some other things. Ideally, book your flight midday when kids can stay on a normal sleep schedule and even hit a nap. If you could hit the sweet spot where your flight corresponds to your kids' nap time, that is ideal, and that is awesome if they're little. So as you think about little kids, one of the harder things about travel is if you book these crazy early flights. So you've got a 5:30 a.m. flight with a connection, and nobody likes that. Adults don't like that. You're getting up at, depending on how far you live from the airport, 3 a.m. trying to get there and lug things around. You're half asleep. You haven't had your coffee. It's miserable. So do yourself a favor. Try to book part of the middle of the day. Also, don't book really late where your kid's grumpy and they normally should be in bed and you're saying, no, don't wait. Let's wait for that 9 p.m. flight. And then we're going to connect at 10:45 and get in at 1 a.m. That's rough. And also going east to west, if you book something really late with a 3-hour time change in California and you're getting into California at midnight, it's 3 a.m. You talk about throwing your kid off. I mean, you're throwing the whole family schedule off, but definitely the kid as well. The second thing I'm going to tell you, pre-flight, TSA pre-check is a must. $78 to $85 for 5 years. It is dirt cheap. Here's what that's going to get you. Everyone doesn't have to take their shoes off. Think about our family of 5. Every person having to pull their shoes off. Then you've got to pull your toiletries out. So you got to pull all that out. And then if you've got tablets for the kids, all those have to be out of the bags. And your laptop has to be out of the bags. It becomes just this stressful, frustrating nightmare at security. You can avoid that just with TSA PreCheck. And it's as simple as going down to your local Staples. You don't even have to go to the airport to get approved for it. It's really easy. So go on the TSA website, book yourself an appointment, submit your paperwork, take a lot of hassle off yourself. Now, here's a boss tip. When you're booking, you're going to get lots of options. A lot of them are about the same price. You can actually drill down and look at your plane. If you click seats on your booking, you'll be able to see what kind of configuration. Is it a CRJ where there's 2 on each side? Is it a traditional 3 and 3 on maybe a 737? Is it, I don't know if they're still flying them, an MD-80 where there's 2 seats on one side, 3 on the other. But what your goal is, you want to try and get an entire row to yourself. It's much easier to manage your family and your kids if it's just your family and your kids in that row. It gets a lot harder if you're trying to manage them with a stranger, because it's just trickier in so many ways. And you're in such tight proximity, your kid can poke a stranger in the eye or step on their laptop. It's just not great. So if possible, look at that, figure out how many people are in your family and book a whole row for yourself to get your number of seats. So worth the stress, worth the lack of stress. When you're booking, take a note card or something. You can do notes in your phone, however you want to do it. Know your alternate routing options in advance. Have those written down somewhere. Because if things go sideways, and I talk about that in the previous episode, now's not the time to start researching which airlines go through which cities to get you to where you want to go. You need to know that in advance because speed is of the essence. And the more you know quicker, the better. So do your research. Also, when you're doing your research the airport if you're connecting through an airport or even your home airport. Research nursing stations if you're nursing. Research where are their playgrounds. If you're bringing the dog, research where can the dog relieve themselves. Research favorite restaurants. With our kids, we got into this thing where they had their favorite restaurants in different connecting cities. So I can remember our son, he loved 2 things in Atlanta. One was Bojangles, and they have Bo biscuits, which are delicious if you've ever tried them. But the other thing is the Varsity, and they've got these great kind of orange cream shake, dreamsicle type things. So research those so you know that there's something to look forward to in those things. Then in advance, and my wife was excellent at this, buy special treats for the kids, but don't let them see them. Do not let them know what's coming. So it could be a cool new art book with pencils or crayons or a different coloring book on flying, or maybe it was one of their favorite foods or whatever it is, sticker books. I know some of the kids were into that at one time. Get those things and put them in a special bag so the kids don't know, and kind of keep those in your hip pocket as sort of your ace card if you end up in a situation where the kid's just losing their mind and you can't get them back under control. I'm also going to say, I know a lot of you have really expensive, fancy strollers and the car seats that click into that, and that's great, but the airlines bang stuff up. No offense to them, but they're getting a lot of cargo moved through fast. I would recommend 2 things when it comes to that. One is, if you're renting a car, just rent the car seats from the car rental agency. That'll save you having to lug that through the airport and all that, unless it's an infant that you're going to put in a car seat, and I get that. You can also, if you're just getting picked up by family, like we did this a lot with my parents, we would have them talk to somebody at their church who had, kids about maybe a little bit older than us, and they still had all the safe car seats, and they would borrow them and they'd have those ready to roll. One less thing to run around about. Second thing is small, cheap umbrella strollers are your friend because they collapse down really small. If they get broken, you're not out a lot of money. They can get you around. Simple. Go right through a conveyor belt in TSA pre-check or security. So again, those are really your best friend. Help your kid out. One other thing I talked about in the previous episode is consider staying in an airport hotel. If you get stuck on one of those really early mornings, stay at the airport hotel rather than do a 3 a.m. home wake up. And then you can kind of be more organized. You don't have to worry about parking and dragging stuff in. You just jump on the shuttle. You're right to the terminal. Get a little bit more sleep for the kids than you would if you had to drive there. All right, let's talk about flight time. Biggest thing, kids are going to match your energy. If you are excited and ready for adventure, they will be too. On the other hand, if you are stressed out and you're tense and you're cranky, they're going to mirror that negative energy. I can tell you at the gate in about 2 seconds when I look around which parents are seemingly bringing the positive energy and which ones it's going to be a rough flight. And I'll tell you, when I see that negative energy, I want to be nowhere near that family when we get on board because it's probably going to go from bad to worse. But those families that are having fun with it, they're going to be okay. The kids are going to behave. The kids mirror what they see from you. They pick up all that from you. So if it's stressing you out, you need to check yourself. Now, I think flying is a special time for dads. It is a time for dads to shine. And here's why. There is a double standard in our country. It shouldn't be this way, but it is, whether it's in the grocery store or whether it's on a flight, dads have a lot more grace than moms. So moms get these dirty looks and judging comments and why don't you control your child and all that goes into that. And it's not fair and it's not right, but it's the reality. Whereas dads, you can be making the same mistakes and people, for whatever reason, are like, wow, it's cool to see dad really putting in an effort. If you understand that, you can make your spouse or your partner's life a lot easier by stepping the heck up in the travel realm. I'm going to tell you, this is going to work out for you well in your relationship with your partner, and it's awesome with your kids. So for me, travel was exploration time. It was a special adventure. It was special time between the kids and dad. And if you have the luxury of traveling with 2 adults, this is easier. Now, if you're solo, you're kind of wearing multiple hats. But if you're traveling with the other parent or another adult, what I would do is kind of divide and conquer. So I would make one more the details person. So they have boarding passes and a lot of the kind of details worked out, and they're monitoring the phone and they're sitting at the gate just to make sure nothing changes. And the other one, I would call them the Kid Explorer Adventure Guide. So this parent, you can forget looking at your phone. You better just tap out on the phone for the next 6 or 8 or 4 or 10 hours, whatever it is. You're not phone guy that day. You are kid guy that day. Your idea is make this as fun as possible. The number one mistake I see from parents is they're sitting at the gate on their phone, zoned out. The kid is already losing their mind, like pulling on dad, let's do this. Mom, let's do this. And they are paying them no attention. They're just, bleh, bleh, bleh. Don't do that. Get rid of the phone. Throw it in your bag if you have to. Don't mess around. Because if you burn all your kind of sitting time sitting at the gate with that kid, you're going to be in trouble on that flight. I want you to be everywhere in that airport exploring. I want you, think about, we get so desensitized to things, but escalators are fun for kids. They don't have an escalator in their school or in their house. That's a cool thing. Glass elevators where you can go up and you're looking out at something. That's cool. Moving sidewalks, awesome fun. Observation decks, fun. Empty gates are really fun. They can play gate agent. You can do obstacle courses. You can do all kinds of things. Think about the fun on trams and even shuttle buses. All those things can be fun for kids. So get after them. Also, know what the connecting city, if you've got a connecting flight, has to offer. Detroit has some really cool things. It has this fountain where the water's all shooting up, really cool little streams, mesmerizing. And they can put their hand on it and then they get a little bit wet, but hopefully not too wet. They've got a tunnel between the two terminals where you're going under the tarmac, and it's got this cool light thing. So that's really neat. They've got an overhead tram. All these things are fun for kids. Think about Minneapolis, and they've got these really cool playgrounds at JFK. If you've ever been to JFK lately, they have restored the old TWA terminal, and it is so fun. They've got like hairdressing room, and they've got old bars, and they've got like the old desks where a TWA executive, I think it was Howard Hughes, had his office, and they have luggage tugs where they can sit on that. So you can really have some fun if you get out there and explore with your kids. Now, some of you have kids with sensory issues where this whole airport experience is like sensory overload, and it is like really stressful. That's okay. There are dead parts of almost every airport, gates where there isn't an airline now. So if you look around a little bit, you'll be able to find those. And if all the gates are busy and there's nothing there, one thing I've found that's really helpful when you just need a minute to kind of catch your breath and not see and hear all the noise. And I've done this with my brother who has some sensory issues. They have chapels in airports. And most of the time, I mean, we can get into this in another time about things, but the chapel is completely empty. So go in there. That's not the place to rip and race, by the way, but go in there and just sit. You might need to say a prayer for getting through the trip, but just let the kid unpack. Maybe they need to just play on their tablet for a minute and kind of zone out. So that's also an option. I like that. Now, if your kids are starting to get a little bit older, one of the things I would encourage you to do on a connecting flight, if you've got a decent layover, let them lead you gate to gate. Sounds funny, right? If you land in gate like Atlanta, A31, and you got to go to T12, let the kid figure that out. Boy, that is cool. Talk about fun for them, way to step up. That's really fun. Now, I recommend in a connecting city, if you're with two people, have one person set up a camp at the departure gate so you can leave all your luggage there and they can be kind of aware of what's going on and they can be in touch with people on the other end. They're on the phone. But the more fun parent, as I would call myself, can run around with the kids and do all the fun things, divide and conquer there. We also found that letting kids select one treat from the airport was a huge winner. We would set a dollar amount. We might give them $10, right? Well, do you know what kids want to do? They want to see all the options first. So if you're in a big airport, by the time they walk all the different corridors of all the different terminals on a long layover, they're pretty beat, right? And then you go back and say, okay, we're buying that or we're buying this. And it could be food or it could be a souvenir, whatever they want within the dollar thing. And it also helps on budgeting. So that's kind of fun. I am a big proponent of running the kids hard during the entire layover. Do not let them, if they're of age, sit and just burn that sitting time. I want them tired when they get on the plane. So some ideas: luggage cart races, moving sidewalk races, reverse moving sidewalk races. It's fun when the kids were younger. I would run off the moving sidewalk and they would run on the moving sidewalk and we'd see who could make it fast. Now, don't run anyone over. Don't be that guy. But a lot of places there's dead spots. So reverse escalator races are really fun, seeing who can run up an escalator quicker. Between the kids or you and the kids. Try not to feed them in the connecting city. Hold out the food until the plane. It's an activity on the plane. However long it takes them to eat whatever it is, their lunch or their dinner, that kind of thing. So another thing I would recommend if you have a family where you've got a couple of adults, one person board first with the stuff and maybe one kid who isn't as high wired, and then the other person board last with the kids. You want to shrink that window of how long you have to manage those kids in that tiny little seat, right? So get them on at the last possible minute if you can. Now, if you're on an overnight flight, I want you to game plan with your kids. I want you to explain how this is going to work. If you're going from, Washington, D.C. to London, I want you to explain, we're going to be on this plane all night. So when we get on, they're going to give us dinner. You're going to get to select a movie and we're going to do that. But when that's over, we're going to bed. Now that may sound funny because you're sitting in a seat, but you put them through the routine that you would put them through as close to as home as possible. So for us, that would be, okay, we're going to go to the restroom. You're going to brush your teeth. You're going to switch into your PJs. We're going to turn off your screens. We're going to make you ready for bed. And then we give them little masks, right? And then put those over their eyes. And we expect them to turn off the screen on the back of their thing and go to sleep. Now, you've got to model this. You can't be watching movies right next to them. It's not going to work very well. So try to do that. And then when the appointed time comes, go through your wake up routine. So go back to the restroom, brush your teeth again, take out your pajamas, put on your clothes for the day, that type of thing. Another cool trick, if your kid's starting to lose it and they're a little bit older, is use the in-flight tracker. So you can actually see where your flight is over the world. And you can begin to teach them, what state do you think we're over? What speed are we going? And you can ask them questions about headwind or time zone. Are we in the mountain time zone or the central time zone right now? So it's a teaching tool, but it's also engaged. There's also in-flight games that you can play against other people on the plane or even against someone in a different seat. So one of the things I like to do as they get a little bit older is try trivia, and they help you with the trivia. You kind of team play trivia against, row 12, the guy in row 12C and the woman in 38D. Question pops up, name the 4 states where the 4 corners are. And you try to get them to figure that out, but you help them. So that's a cool thing. Also, as you're on that flight tracker and you know what's below, if it's a clear day, look down. Look for stadiums. Did you see that stadium or this stadium? Or one of my favorite ones is between Phoenix and Salt Lake City, you go over the Grand Canyon. So tell me when we see the Grand Canyon and you're flying and you're just looking down, it looks like regular ground. And then the bottom falls out and they're like, oh, there's the Grand Canyon. So talk about engaging them. Or it could be the Vegas Strip, or if you're landing in New York, Statue of Liberty, whatever it is. Another tip, make them manage their stuff. Don't try to carry all their junk. Let them manage their junk. It wears them out, and it gives them a good lesson that you're not their caddy. You're not their porter. You're just on the trip with them. Ask if you can meet the pilot or tour the cockpit. Sometimes they say yes. Sometimes they say no. That's a really awesome thing if you get that opportunity. See if they have wings. Get them wings for whatever airline you're on. I would also encourage you to have your kids journal as they get a little bit older and they can write. Just jot down ideas, fun stuff they did and that kind of thing. And what you'll see is this is actually cool. They'll look back in their journal and they'll say, oh, I remember in Milwaukee on Midwest Airlines, I ate this, or they had chocolate chip cookies. And you're like, wow, that's cool. And they may then want to do something in that airport because they remembered it from their journal. And you can do this even as you're coming out of the airport. Whose bag's going to come out first if you checked bags, or who can spot grandma and grandpa in the car first, or who can find a free abandoned luggage cart. I can remember there was a airport, I can't remember which one it was in, but when you brought the luggage carts back, I think it gave you 50 cents, like 2 quarters back. And so the kids started collecting all these carts and putting them in there, and they were getting like handfuls of quarters. They were having a great time, and it got them moving. So you can bond with your kids during travel. Travel doesn't have to be misery. Travel is actually probably one of the easiest times to engage with your kids. It is a time to explore. It is a time to share in that sense of adventure and excitement and wonder. It is a time to have a blast. So I hope some of these tips have helped you, and I am so excited that you are out there on your next adventure. Thanks for joining me today on the Super Pumped podcast. If you enjoyed today's show as much as I did, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app and tell your friends about the show so others can find and benefit from the Super Pumped community. And finally, to put the ideas from today's show into action, visit us at superpumped.com to view the show notes, book a complimentary consultation, or take our free business launch readiness assessment. Keep well, and I'll see you next time.